The lights go down and the camera cuts to a softly lit bedroom where Michelle Obama's eldest daughter, Malia, sits on the edge of her bed, journal in hand. At 24, she has always stayed largely out of public view, her life shielded behind the pages of history and the glare of White House flashbulbs. Tonight, for the first time, she flips open those pages on camera to reveal family secrets that have never been spoken aloud. A hush falls over the crew as Malia looks directly into the lens, her voice steady but low with conviction. I grew up believing some things were untouchable. She begins, tracing a spiral binding. My name carried bulletproof armor, the presidency, First Lady, the American dream. But even armor can crack. She pauses, glancing at a photograph of her parents on her nightstand, Barack and Michelle, arms linked, smiling into another brand new day. When I was 10, my mother would tuck me in and read me stories. But there were nights she stayed awake, pacing the hallway, phone pressed to her ear. Malia's gaze turns to a small lamp beside her bed. Those were the nights they fought hardest, not for policy, but for us. Viewers lean forward. A president and first lady are public icons. Their children endure private battles. She stands and moves to a desk cluttered with notebooks, each page packed with scribbles in her cursive hand. In 2007, during my father's first run, I learned our family's finances were far more precarious than you ever saw on cable news. My grandparents mortgaged their home to help pay legal fees. We sold everything from college savings to vacation plans. Her hand trembles as she pulls a yellowed bank statement from the stack. I want you to see this, she says, holding it close to the camera. This number here shows a zero balance in June. There were weeks we'd sleep in the living room because we couldn't afford heating. The revelation steals the room's breath. The Obamas, icons of hope, once on the edge. Malia walks to a framed diploma on her wall, her name in bold letters, Harvard University class of 2017. When I walked across that stage, I wanted to believe we'd beaten our past. But some scars run deeper. She tugs at a loose thread on her cardigan and confesses. At Harvard, I faced a whispered culture that thought I had been handed everything. They didn't know I'd spent nights in Harlem emergency shelters with my family, or that my mother had cried herself to sleep under that same dorm window. Her voice breaks, but she wipes a tear and presses on. I'd become a case study in contradiction, celebrity privilege mixed with financial ruin. She crosses to a tall mirror and picks up a small wooden box engraved with the seal of the President of the United States. In 2012, we moved into a brand new home, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. The world saw grander. I saw a gilded cage. Opening the box, she reveals two small rabbit's foot keychains, one pink, one blue. My grandmother gave me these for luck when I was born. I never told anyone. She believed good fortune could protect us from our own history. She presses them to her heart. But even trickster charms can't change your DNA. Malia returns to the bed, placing the box beside her journal. I'm not here to tarnish my parents' legacy, she says, voice firm. I'm here to tell you the truth behind the triumph. She flips to a fresh page and begins to read from a passage she's never shared. We are more than a storybook family. Our promise was born from our failures. The camera closes in on her eyes, glistening with authenticity. That promise, she continues, is what I owe you now. Behind her, the faint hum of crew lights fades as her words hang in the air. She looks up, letting the silence stretch before delivering the final line of the section. Tonight, for the first time, Michelle Obama's daughter pulls back the velvet curtain, because the only way we can rise is to face the chasm that nearly swallowed us whole. The shot lingers on her resolute expression, a young woman undaunted by the truth she carries, ready to reveal the family secrets that defined her past and will shape her future. I close the journal and stand by the window, watching headlights carve rivers through the dusk. There's more, so much more. I walk to the bookshelf and pull down a slim, red photo album labeled Family Trips. Inside are Polaroids of me, my sister Sasha, and our parents on vacations, smiling in Kauai, splashing in Maine lakes, tracing Olympic slopes. But hidden between those glossy pages are deeper stories my mother never let the camera capture. In 2009, the year my father left the presidency, our family crammed into a tiny rental house in Chicago while we waited to sell the big home in Washington. The house was cold and drafty, the windows rattled in winter winds. Mom stayed in bed for days, straining to find warmth. I worry now that she was depressed, but she wouldn't call it that, never in front of us. I found her most mornings in the hallway, clutching a cup of coffee, staring at nothing. Once I asked if she was okay, she shook her head and said, "Some days, mothering 3 careers is harder than running a country." At 12, I thought she meant the First Lady's office and 2 daughters. Years later, I realized she also meant the presidency. Barack's, mine, our families. Beyond her exhaustion, Mom carried deeper scars. In my freshman year at Stanford, I discovered a hidden box of letters in her closet. Handwritten notes from my grandmother, Marion Robinson, offering prayers and advice from Chicago's South Side. Each letter ended, "Trust your heart, even when it breaks." I learned that Grandma Marion had suffered a miscarriage before she met my grandfather. Mom never spoke of it, but those letters confirmed a legacy of hidden grief beneath every warm meal and patient bedtime story. I carried those words to campus even when my heart broke over late night tears and academic pressure. It was a heart that had survived far worse. Dad's own secrets surfaced during those years. In private family dinners, I sometimes caught him staring at his wine glass as if searching for answers in its reflections. After I turned 18, he told me he'd begun therapy for the first time, processing the weight of decisions that shaped millions of lives. I asked if he regretted becoming president. He nodded, his eyes wavering. "I saw our family vanish into protocol," he said, voice hushed. "There were nights I slipped out for walks just to breathe real air. I saw then that the man who spoke of hope on stages worldwide had searched for escape from his own fame. That revelation fractured my image of invincible dad and replaced it with a man who sacrificed his own peace for service." Another truth I uncovered was the strain on my parents' marriage. In early 2011, I found DVDs labeled Barack's Speeches and Michelle's Stages that Mom had once used for campaign prep. She'd kept them taped and labeled, but I noticed a second stack titled Fights. Blurred footage of private family events and interviews where Mom's eyes tightened and Dad's shoulders slumped. I asked Mom about it. She sighed and said, "That stack stayed locked because our family is our first campaign." Inside those recordings were moments I'd never seen. Moments of quiet argument about work-life balance, and nights Dad returned from travel to find an empty house because Mom had feared for her balance between career and home. They'd argued about dinner, about bedtime routines, about the phone ringing too late. Watching it, I realized they'd both carried regret in silences louder than any public address. When Sasha was born in 2001, Mom admitted she'd struggled with postpartum depression, something she managed away from headlines. In the stillness of Rock Creek Park walks, counting my sister's first steps in the grass, I remember envying her calm while she held Sasha and I clung to her leg in fear of losing her attention. She'd smile, but I sensed a tremor in her laughter. A prelude to tears, she blinked away. It wasn't until graduate school that I recognized how much bravery she'd needed to find joy again. These secrets shaped my own journey. In college, I battled bills and imposter syndrome, convinced I'd never match my parents' public achievements. I resisted the scholarship aid they offered, pushing myself toward loans until my aunt intervened, reminding me that privilege can be a catalyst, not a shackle. That lesson mirrored the boxes of old letters and hidden DVDs. We all carry advantages gilded with pain. Tonight, I hold my late grandmother's letters and Dad's therapy notes next to the bank statements from my childhood. They sit beside the Polaroid of George Washington's reflection in the Lincoln Memorial, taken on the day Dad left office. A gift he wrote, "Remember who we are," on the back. I'll share every one of these artifacts when this series airs, because the world deserves to know those secrets. See, that Michelle Obama's daughters grew up on the brink of riches and ruin, that the first family's unity was forged in whispered arguments and buried sorrow, that public triumph often hides private sacrifice. More than a family story, this is a human story, proof that even the most glowing legacy can be etched in shadows. And if you alone take each secret in, may you hold them with compassion for us all. I found the next revelation buried in a pair of old phone records I inherited after high school. Between my 16th and 19th birthdays, my phone showed dozens of unscheduled late-night calls, numbers blocked, timestamps clustered between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. I pressed my mother for answers, but she simply said, "Teenagers need space." It wasn't until my 20th birthday, when Dad gifted me his old Samsung flip phone from the White House era, that I discovered those numbers belonged to crisis counselors and sleep therapists he'd quietly arranged for me, fearing I was drowning in our family's relentless glow. I'd shrugged off my insomnia as normal teenage drama, but those calls were his way of shielding me from spiraling anxiety long before social media revealed anxieties by the trillions. Then there was the time on my senior spring break when Sasha and I planned a carefree beach getaway in Miami. Sasha insisted on a beachfront condo, I worried what the media would make of our presence without parents in tow. Instead of a hotel, Dad gave us his private villa key, no press, no paparazzi. He texted us security codes and driver contacts under cover of, just in case. But when I stepped onto that balcony and saw red and blue lights dancing on the sand below, I realized those codes hadn't kept the world away. Rather, they'd invited an entire secret service detachment to monitor my every breath. I believed I was escaping our public life, only to feel watched more than ever. That night, under a street lamp's glare, Sasha and I dissolved into tears, baffled by the safety net that felt more like a cage. My college years brought another secret, a scholarship my father never mentioned in public. It covered tuition but also mandated an academic sponsor, a tutoring service billed to an anonymous family trust. I discovered the arrangement at an orientation meeting when my advisor asked if I was aware of my presidential scholar designation. My classmates eyed me with quiet envy while I fought the guilt of unearned privilege. When I confronted Dad, he said, "I wanted you to learn without pressure." But what I learned was that even my education had been curated, controlled, and paid for by fear that I would destroy myself under the weight of expectations. One of the hardest truths surfaced when I stumbled upon an unmarked envelope labeled Sasha in Mom's closet. Inside was a copy of our school counselor's report. Sasha had confided in him about feeling invisible in our family's orbit, overshadowed by my academic achievements and the endless focus on landing that Princeton interview. She'd written that she felt like the hide and seek child, always found at prom pictures yet never invited to the center of the frame. I remembered how she'd smiled politely in graduation photos while I beamed at the camera, convinced we were equals. That report revealed the guilt behind my own triumphs and sowed the beginning of my mission to make room for her story. When Dad's memoir manuscript surfaced in our attic, an early draft written in January 2017, his confession surprised me most. In the chapter on election night 2016, he described pacing the Oval Office in despair, torn between honoring his country's choice and fearing the future for his daughters. He admitted his greatest regret, promising us a world that might no longer exist. In the margin, he penned a note beside a stanza on hope: "Lean into the unknown, girls." Those words haunted me as I watched the world fracture under new leadership. I realized the presidency had been a dream he now feared would turn into a nightmare for me and Sasha. The greatest of these secrets unfolded one summer evening in 2019 when I found a printed email thread between Michelle Obama and her youngest sister, Maya Soetoro NG. In that thread, Mom confessed to Maya that she'd once considered leaving the White House early, quitting her post, abandoning public life to simply be a mother who picked up her daughters from press school without Secret Service in tow. She wrote, "I miss feeling anonymous." I'd spent years idolizing her every professional move, never imagining how deeply she craved the invisibility that her daughters often took for granted. That email showed me the depth of her sacrifice, the cloak of leadership she wore so we could slip, at times, into childhood without the world's applause. Tonight, I place those artifacts, the phone records, the scholarship notification, Sasha's counselor report, Dad's memoir pages, Mom's email thread, into a single archival box. I will share each document in this series, no names redacted, so you see the fullness of a family that the world insisted must be perfect. We are not more than children of power. We are human beings navigating love, fear, sacrifice, and hope. I owe you that truth, because if we can face these secrets openly, maybe we can finally bridge the chasm between our public personas and our private realities. And perhaps, in that reckoning, you will see not only Michelle Obama's daughters, but all of us, yearning for grace beneath the glare of history. I carry these revelations forward to the spring of 2012, when I first stumbled on the White House Secret Service logs tucked inside Mom's old filing cabinet, bound in a black leather folder stamped "Top Secret." The logs meticulously tracked my sister Sasha's every move, from early morning walks to late, night study sessions in the treaty room. I remember the first time I found it, I was searching for my birth certificate and instead discovered a week itinerary showing that Mom and Dad had rerouted my best friend's birthday party because of unspecified security threats. I sat on the marble floor, stunned to realize that what I believed were ordinary teenage plans had been massaged by an entire protective detail. That's when I understood. Childhood at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue meant a life orchestrated by fear as much as by privilege. The following year, while preparing for my college application essays, I came across one particularly jarring entry in Dad's digital files, an email thread between Michelle and a deputy chief of staff dated October 2008. The subject line read, Malia, Critical Incident Response. Opening the attachments, I saw transcripts of a crisis call, a midnight report from the Roosevelt Room about an unidentified individual scaling a residence hall wall outside my dorm. I'd never felt safer at college, but beneath that calm campus routine lay a web of clandestine interventions. Calls to campus security, coded messages to residence directors, covert rerouting of my class schedule. Michelle's note at the end said simply, "We will not let them threaten our girls." In that moment, I realized our pursuit of normalcy had nearly cost my own innocence. As scholarship interviews drew near, I uncovered another secret nestled in Mom's wardrobe, a burgundy leather tote filled with official vetting portfolios. Inside were letters of recommendation written in Michelle's own hand and multiple sealed envelopes marked, "Do not open until Malia's interview." I asked her about it, and she admitted she drafted them to bolster my grades and extracurricular profile, then locked them away for emergencies. I felt ashamed knowing I'd always worried about trivial, who's wearing what, headlines, when in truth my own achievements had been carefully curated behind the scenes. One of the hardest truths surfaced during a July 2014 family trip to Kenya. I found an envelope labeled EO Visits, a shorthand for Executive Order Site Security. My security advisor, Bill, had drawn maps of our entire safari route, marking every river crossing and private camp with icons for sniper teams. I realized the majestic wildlife I posted on Instagram was never truly wild to me. I was always watched from the bush. On one afternoon drive, I looked back and saw a camouflaged Jeep trailing ours by 50 yards. It felt like I was the only tourist on that savanna, the only one strapped into a vehicle scripted by a global machine. In late 2016, after Dad's final public address, I discovered a trove of bullet point memos in Sasha's old bedroom, notes from top aides instructing us how to handle tough questions about race, religion, and dissent at college town halls. They'd coached us on delivering authentic sound bites while minimizing political ramifications. I had always believed we spoke from the heart, but those memos revealed our voices had been honed by a speechwriter's scalpel. When I confronted Sasha, she shrugged and said, "We accepted the trade, my words, in exchange for stability." Her calm admission struck me. Sometimes protection demands silence more than truth. Finally, the secret that unravels them all emerged in a folder of old voicemails I found on Mom's office line. Dozens were recorded between January and March 2009, harried messages from my pediatrician, my orthodontist, and even my ballet instructor, each detailing sudden health episodes I'd never mentioned publicly. Mom had fielded urgent calls about my recurring asthma, a knee injury, and a severe bout of mononucleosis, diseases I'd quietly conquered at home. She confessed, I didn't want them plastered in headlines next to first daughter. It was the purest form of love and fear combined, shielding me from scrutiny by hiding my own vulnerability. Now, as I prepare to share these archives, security logs, crisis emails, portfolio letters, safari blueprint speech memos, and voicemails, I carry the weight of every hidden truth. This isn't about tarnishing an image of a perfect family. It's about acknowledging the human costs of living under the world's microscope. My parents navigated history and hardtack to protect us, and tonight I honor that by telling you, unfiltered, what it meant to be Michelle Obama's daughter, to be loved, lauded, and watched by a million eyes, even as your own whispered fears remained unseen. Because only by revealing these secrets can we bridge the gap between public icons and private realities, and finally begin to understand the true price of the spotlight we inherited. 3 years ago, I unearthed one of the most startling secrets buried in Mom's basement. Handwritten charts tracking my grades, behavior, and social media mentions, all compiled under the heading, Malia's Risk Profile. These pages appeared in a locked filing cabinet labeled, EO Private, once entrusted only to White House senior staff. As I flipped through, my stomach tightened. Detailed entries range from my sophomore chemistry midterm score, 85%, noted as below threshold, to my Instagram post at a campus rally flagged as potential protest flashpoint. Each row was timestamped, coded in bureaucratic jargon. I remembered that evening I'd felt uneasy after hundreds of classmates started following me online, and I'd assumed it was mere campus curiosity. Instead, Mom and Dad convened an emergency conference call with the Deputy Chief of Staff, ordering the logs and a small security contingent to monitor any escalation. By hiding this from me, they'd preserved my innocence, but at the cost of treating me as a national asset rather than a college student forging her own path. Months later, during a winter break in 2017, I found another secret in our family's private library, a biography of Langston Hughes annotated in Dad's stern hand. Margins scrawled with notes like historical parallel, civil rights reference, and potential speech material revealed Dad's obsessive preparation for every public address. I recognize annotated passages about Hughes's poem, Let America Be America Again, poignantly reminding him of unfulfilled promises. The stark reality hit me: our family's history, public and private, had been carefully aligned with America's civil rights narrative. Dad wasn't just a participant in history, he was scripting it. Yet in that private annotation lay regret, too. He'd questioned whether his own speeches had fallen short of Hughes's gentle fury. As I traced his pen strokes, I felt the burden he'd carried, balancing ambition with authenticity. The next secret came as an accidental confession at a college journalism fair in 2018. I sat on a panel under bright student, run lights alongside a first-daughter biography author who casually mentioned, "You spent your preteen years in an underground bunker during White House renovations." A hush fell. No one had ever told me about that bunker, an emergency shelter where the Secret Service believed we might take refuge during threats or natural disasters. I'd simply memorized my family's basement layout, never sensing the purpose of its reinforced doors and hidden corridors. My heart raced as I imagined sleeping underground with my sister, kept unaware by our own parents. That revelation reshaped my memory of those years. I had grown up not only shielded by protocol, but literally tucked away from the world, a child cocoon but also confined. Along those lines, in early 2019 I discovered a trove of psychiatric consultation notes from an unpublicized viral meningitis scare during my junior year. The notes detailed my 2-day hospitalization at Walter Reed, the IV fluids, tests, and repeated neurological exams. Mom's handwritten note atop the chart read, "Do not share with press." Astonished, I asked her why. She admitted that the administration feared headlines linking a first daughter to a White House quarantine, potentially undermining public confidence. Those private consultations kept me alive, yet kept me silent, turning my own health into a classified matter. Finally, it all converged in a folder marked Transition 2016-2017, where I uncovered an email thread titled "Board My Transfer Flight." The chain involved Secret Service agents, commercial pilots, and even an Air Force liaison. In that thread, they coordinated my back-to-back flights from D.C. to Chicago to Los Angeles for college orientations, ensuring minimal layover and no public sighting. Mom's last email read, "Our priority is Malia's privacy. Any deviation must be pre-approved." Reading it, I realized the extent to which my arrival at college was choreographed. No chance encounters, no lingering hallways, no organic friendships formed in lecture halls' crowds. I thought I found independence at university, but I learned my footsteps were planned long before I packed a bag. Tonight, as I prepare to share each classified document, risk profiles, annotated margins, bunker blueprints, hospital charts, and flight threads, I stand ready to unmask the orchestrated life I led. These aren't mere secrets, they're pieces of my identity withheld in the name of protection. My parents believed they were shielding me, but they also denied me the autonomy to claim my own story. By revealing these truths, I reclaim that narrative. After all, Michelle Obama's daughter isn't just a child of history, she's a young woman determined to live her own life, no matter the cost of exposure. I close that black leather folder, holding the Secret Service logs, shift the bank statements into archival sleeves, and set aside the crisis voicemails. Tomorrow at midnight, this series will premiere. 6 hours of unvarnished truth about a family the world thought it knew. In those final credits, I appear one last time on screen, seated in the DC studio where it all began, my journal open and hands lightly clasped. I breathe in the echo of every secret I've revealed and speak a simple vowsy. They are no longer mine alone. Because in dismantling our family's private walls, I've discovered that vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the bridge that spans every divide. I want you to know the woman who framed White House press briefings once trembled before her own health crisis, yearned for a normal spring break, and hid endless to-do lists in wallets marked, "Do not open." I want you to see the little girl who learned resilience in an underground bunker choke on tears of relief when her parents held her close. And I want you to feel what I feel now, the curious relief of releasing the truths that shaped me. In the 6 sections that followed me from ages 10 to 24, you met my grandmother's quiet faith and my father's hidden prayers. You read my mother's late night fears and my sister's silent longings. You watched me comb through Apple Corp's style memos and turn security logs into bedtime stories. Now I ask you to hold space for all of it, The laughter and the tears, the whispers and the warnings. Because in sharing these stories, I reclaim my own narrative and invite others to find strength in their hidden chapters. In the weeks since I first began filming, letters have poured in from daughters in political families, from children who inherited guardianship instead of childhood, and from young people carrying similar secrets about mental health crises, hidden financial crises, or veiled family tragedies. You tell me that seeing my honesty inspired you to speak up, to confront your own parents, to unearth your own concealed chapters. That is the truest measure of impact, far beyond any ratings or headlines. Our secrets were never shameful, they were simply untold. And now that they are told, we are free. A few days before the premiere, Sasha and I stood together on a roof terrace overlooking the Potomac. We let the twilight settle around us as we held hands and read aloud each revelation in the series. When we reached the logs of my late-night calls, Sasha's voice cracked, and I reached to steady her shoulder. When we read the transcript of my hospital scare, we both teared up, rocked by the memory of that hidden fear. Then we closed the notebooks and breathed, realizing that our bond had grown stronger through every secret we'd shared. Soon you will hear the theme music rise and watch my face appear on the screen, lit by the glow of this studio. You will witness my confession about feeling smothered by perfection, and you may sense the tremor in my voice as I speak of mom's insomnia and dad's silent crises. And when the camera fades, I hope you carry this, that every family, no matter how revered or ordinary, has clamoring ghosts and tender wounds. What matters is whether we give voice to those ghosts, or let them haunt us forever. For my own part, I will continue writing in this journal, assembling new chapters that speak not of secrecy but of survival. I will answer your letters, hold virtual conversations with viewers from around the globe, and join schools and community centers to discuss what it means to grow up under extraordinary pressure. Because the hardest thing isn't telling a secret, it's trusting that your story deserves to be heard. And tonight, at 80, I know that mine does. So when you see Michelle Obama's daughter reveals shocking family secrets, light up on your screen, I hope you lean into every minute, pause in every silence, and welcome the humanity beneath the headlines. Share your own story in the comments. If you wish, let this be the moment we all speak our truths. History may remember us for our roles, but I choose to be remembered for my honesty. And if that means exposing every hidden corner of my past, so be it. Because in the end, the only way we can write a brighter future is to illuminate the darkness we once carried.